two very small slight updates, and then later 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Paragraph 6 is about the number of meeting days that we propose for the work of the GGE in 2022. 10 days. This was proposed by the GGE chair during the last session of the GGE, and there was no objection to this. The key consideration is, of course, the constraints that we have in the Palais des Nations related to the Heritage Project. I think this is a practical constraint, and I trust that there are no comments or objections to this number. The last paragraph of this section refers to the GGE chair. We do not have a designation ready at this time, and we have here a language that provides for the designation of the GGE chair by consensus through a silence procedure.
German.
Okay. I recognize the distinguished delegate from Germany, Ambassador.
Thank you very much for your tremendous work. I already commented yesterday and supported what you have put before us. I have the impression we hadn't a real discussion concerning to the duration of the GGE next year. I understand that there was a proposal put forward by the GGE chair of about 10 days, which is now also here before us in the draft. However, in the light what we just also decided concerning the solemn declaration, that's to say to intensify our efforts and in the work of the GGO laws, we are just wondering if this might be sufficient for the upcoming GGE, and we would certainly support a proposal that we would have not only 10 days but some days more. Yesterday we heard a proposal from our distinguished colleague from North Macedonia proposing even 25 days. You have referred to the constraints we are facing here in Geneva, and it's clear that this will pose certainly problems. However, we should perhaps be more ambitious here, looking for at least 20 days of meetings in the next JGE. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of the Netherlands, to be followed by North Macedonia. Ambassador, please, you have the floor.
I believe some changes have been made in the text compared to the text we got yesterday. For instance, in the para which starts with "in the context of the objectives and purposes," there was a reference to "contained in the reports of the group of the government experts." Is it correct that this is deleted? Thank you.
Ambassador, yes. The reference to reports has been deleted, but we did keep language on recommendations and conclusions of the group of experts there.
Is it working? So thank you very much for this update. Maybe it can be made clear in the text which changes exactly have been made in the text, so it's visible for all of us what has been changed. So if you could do that. A first reaction is I'm a bit surprised, because I was in the understanding that we adopted the report with the annex. And actually, since we only had a procedural report, it basically means that we will not take into consideration the content of the reports of previous chairs, which means we only refer to old. For my delegation, at least, the acquis, which we have agreed upon, inclusive of the reports of the chairs, and I'm talking of the report of 21, 20, and all the previous reports, will be part of the acquis and on which we base our work. Otherwise, basically, we are saying the content we discussed this year under Ambassador Paxton is basically not anymore valid, and we don't take that into consideration. That is not the reading of my delegation, and I think the overwhelming majority in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished delegates of North Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's understandable that there is going to be quite a bit of work in the Palais next year. And the work of multilateral in Geneva has certainly re-intensified after a slight lull in live meetings over the past period. But if we are, and I echo Germany's sentiment here, if we are truly to intensify our efforts, and if we are to focus on legal, military, and technological aspects, bearing in mind ethical perspectives, as we've put in a solemn declaration, Madam Chair, 10 days is simply not enough. Certainly, the 25 days proposed by my delegation yesterday do bear in mind several aspects, and that is the experience of the past year, the experience of past years, and the limitation is a real one that you've cited in the works of the Palais. So perhaps we can certainly think of lowering that number, but 10 days is just too little for my delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Cuba.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to highlight how important it is to strive to be constructive during this meeting. Regrettably, this meeting is ending today at 6 p.m. with interpretation services. So that means that after 6 p.m. we won't have any further time. I think it would be a bad idea to impose our view, even though it's a majority view, even though it's against a single delegation, because this will run counter to the spirit of working on consensus. Our delegation is not satisfied whatsoever with most of the language there on the screen. We do understand, however, that everyone's view has been reflected. I think it would be a bad idea to open up the text now to try to impose a vision, even though it's a view, even though it's supported by 10, 20 or 30 delegations. Today, we're really here to adopt the report, and our delegation fully endorses the report as you have presented it, with the oral amendments made. And I understand that these amendments accommodate all delegations. On the issue of the number of days, our delegation agrees with the German and Macedonian delegations, the delegation from North Macedonia, that this is something that could be reviewed if this leads to consensus. I think the magical or minimum number of days would be 15, because at the last review conference we adopted 15 days. Now, at this meeting, even if we were to adopt 14 days, we would be conveying the message that following a review conference, from one review conference to another, we want to reduce our pace of work. We are flexible as to the number of days because we understand that this is a very important issue, but we believe that 15 days should be the bare minimum in order to be in step with what we agreed on in the past. You can count on us to be very flexible, but if possible, we would like to work on this on the basis of consensus, even though we do understand the financial constraints imposed on this convention and, of course, the economic crisis caused by the pandemic and the repairs work that will take place here in the Palais. But I think the message is important. The message that we sent at the last review conference was that we would meet for at least 15 days. I think it would be worthwhile to work on the basis of 15 to start with that figure, because this mandate will impose upon us that we need to set up a number of important issues and work on a number of important themes. Thank you very much.
On this matter and the number of meeting days, as I said, this was raised initially in the GGE. There was no thorough discussion on it in that, and so far here, the ambassador of Germany is correct on that. I am informed that we can possibly have 15 days, but the understanding is that these 5 meeting days, or it will mean that we will conduct the GGE in parallel with other disarmament meetings taking place in Geneva next year. These are constraints imposed on us by the renovation, of course, and the tight disarmament calendar that we have. And I would also like to give the floor to Hyun from the ISU to address this question. For now, I'd like to give the floor to the distinguished delegates of the Russian Federation.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you for having taken the floor as regards the activities of the group for 2022. The issue of pursuing the work of the group of experts on new technologies in the area of laws is an issue which arises each time round during each meeting of the states parties. Within groups at the review conference today, we get the feeling that this is the most important issue within the activities of the group, that is to say, the number of days. But I think this is far from being the case. We agree with the fact that the group must step up and intensify its work. However, this is not associated with the pursuance of activities of the group and the continuity of the activities. This is linked to the quality, the increased quality of the group, the level of expertise that the states parties will contribute to the group, as well as their determination to address a number of specific issues with content. And we shouldn't just limit ourselves to making statements within the group. This really is where the issue lies. This is where they need to intensify the work. It's not about increasing the number of days of activities of the group. The confirmation that the quality of the group isn't linked to the length of meeting days and the number of meetings has been the practice in recent years. If we look at previous years, in 2018, in 2019, when the group reached an agreement on conclusions and recommendations that it was able to draw up guiding principles as regards new technologies in laws, in the field of laws. Our group had worked for 10 days. And 1 year we met for 7 days. Nonetheless, this did not prevent the group from attaining a significant result. This year, we have worked for 15 days. That is true.
The result we achieved is reflected in the report of this year, and unfortunately, it comes only down to agreeing on 4, in very many ways, factual conclusions. And there's an absence of recommendations, which is obviously a disappointment. Therefore, we think in no way does the quality of the group's work is linked to the duration of its work. In terms of also duration, we should also highlight the financial aspects, which are related to the quantity of days of the group's meetings, with the renovation, with the heritage project that's taking place at UNOG, and overall with the disarmament fora for next year, which is there's going to be a lot of fora. The agenda of those fora are going to be very busy next year, given as a result of the pandemic. And therefore, in our opinion, we should keep the practice that we have agreed in 2019, which is to devote 10 days to meetings of the group in an ordinary calendar year. Since 15 days were agreed only because of the RevCon this year and necessity to prepare the report ahead of the RevCon. And so back in 2020, it was just 10 days. Therefore, we think it's necessary to maintain that practice. 10 days is the optimal number of days for the meeting of the group in order to achieve substantive results, as was done back in 2018 and 19. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to our colleague from the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the Chair just mentioned, the ISU has done extensive consultation with the Conference Management Unit of UNOG, and while it is possible to have a GGE session in 2022 for more than 10 days, it will overlap with other disarmament meetings based in Geneva, or the only month available is the month of July.
My experience in Geneva is that diplomats handling arms control and security are not afraid of working in summer. But that's a real, I think, practical issue that we have to deal with. So we have here in the draft report for adoption 10 days. There are, of course, and I think they're right about it, that if we are to further intensify our work, it must mean more meeting days. But there's also been a point made about the quality of our work, not the number of meeting days that we have. And therefore, and also, I think one point raised here is that very important, is that if we agree on 15 days, it means that we will have to work simultaneously with other bodies, maybe here in New York and in Geneva. And actually, this is not, at least to my knowledge and our own perspective as a small delegation, this does not really put small delegations in a position to engage meaningfully in the process. But it's up to the committee to decide on this right now. Why don't we try to keep it at 10? I see flags raised, and I recognize the distinguished delegate of Spain, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I think we're all right in some respects. What we all want to do is attain and carry out high quality work, and this is what is most important when it comes to achieving results. It is undoubtable, therefore, that regardless of the days that we have, we will have to give our best and do our utmost. But I cannot go along with the idea of reducing the number of days on days of a preventive basis, because as possible, as the Secretariat said, it would be possible to hold meetings in July, even though it would coincide with other disarmament meetings. Now, my delegation has usually been against holding meetings at that time. However, given in this case, the group of experts on lethal autonomous weapon systems is a group of experts. In other words, people who come from capital, usually. The diplomats covering all meetings in Geneva can be very many things, but I don't think we can be experts in everything. So I wouldn't see a problem in working on the basis of 15 days, if possible, to see how we can adapt this in agenda terms, but even in July, and take into account those certain factors. Those coming to those meetings need to be experts, not general diplomats who go from one conference to another. That's the first point. And the second point, the meeting should, of course, attain the quality demanded of us as per our objectives and goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate of North Macedonia, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Cuba.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my delegation echoes the sentiment that July is a fine month. From what my delegation understands, this summer may not have been, but usually it is. And the work of this group is important, Madam Chair, and it's important to really, for us at this moment, re-emphasize its importance. We do that in the solemn declaration, and we do that by saying that we need to focus on aspects that we haven't so far, in a manner we haven't so far, on legal, on military, on technological aspects. And this is just simply not possible in 10 days. And certainly quality can be put into a number of days, and it need not be the quantity that decides it, but number of formal days is relevant. It is relevant for the aspect of multilingualism, which is a central point of multilateralism. Countries deserve to be able to speak in their own languages, the 6 formal languages of the United Nations, and experts who cannot speak and understand in interpretation in their own language are hampered. They're left in a position that is unfair to them. So in the spirit of multilingualism and of multilateralism, we certainly would like to see an increased number of days than that has been put in this text. The Cuban delegation of 15 days seems a reasonable one under the circumstances, and it's certainly acceptable to my delegation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I recognize the distinguished delegate of Cuba, to be followed by the distinguished delegate of Italy and Bulgaria. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for taking the floor again. Just to stress that what the Secretariat just said is new to us. Our delegation would not support overlapping meetings because often often we can't attend both meetings, and with small delegations like our own, you know, we're not talking 3 people, it's 1 person. So honestly, I think overlapping meetings, that's not an option for us. But I realize that in July there may be a space where, if possible, in July, so if there's no overlap of meetings, then our delegation could do that, obviously with the 15 days. Second final point is we'd like to call for flexibility from others. We understand all points of view. We don't want to force anything through here. That's not the way we work. But I want to make something clear. Here, there is no 10-day practice. In the past of the GGE, Cuba blocked that proposal. So here, there is no practice. There's no practice of 15, 7, or 10. It's a decision which is taken at the moment on a case-by-case basis. In this case, we insist on 15 days. Now, it's not a red line for us. We realize we have a new mandate. That mandate will hear proposals that are going to be considered. And if you're saying 10 days, let's say the first week, that will be dedicated only to presenting proposals. Then you get the second week, then we always do the report in week 2. And it's true, and I fully agree with Russia, that neither 7 or 25 days will guarantee the quality of work. But what the fact is, in this working group, unlike all other meetings I know, we are always up till 3 a.m. in the morning trying to adopt a report, which shows that a little bit more time would be prudent. I thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Italy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning to you and to all colleagues. I believe that I don't need to repeat the arguments that have already been clearly explained by many colleagues before me, including now by my distinguished colleague of Cuba. But I have a question, because I don't understand if here our problem is the duration of the meeting of next year because of a practical and technical question related with the availability of rooms and the work at the Palais, or if it is a discussion about how many days we need in correspondence of the mandate that we are considering in front of us. Because if we are talking about how many days we need, I believe that it's coherent, consistent with the mandate that we work at least for 15 days. If it is a problem of logistical organization, well, I believe that the Secretariat has already offered us a solution. But in case there is need of time to still consider it, and also given that we are not establishing dates yet, because we have a duration but not dates, I'm wondering if we cannot simply say that the group shall meet for a minimum of 10 days and up to 15 days in 2022, and finding the dates in another moment. And I believe that the financial situation can be solved easily on the basis that we approve a budget for 15 days, and then if there is the need, we have the money. Otherwise, we can return the credit to states. Thank you.
Thank you, but we would prefer, of course, to have a decision on a fixed number of days so as to avoid a scenario where the next office holders will spend so much time discussing this. So I think let's try to agree at this committee on a fixed number of days. And I think we're getting some sense of what the right number looks like. Okay, and I would like to now give the floor to our distinguished colleague from Bulgaria, to be followed by our distinguished delegate from Venezuela, and after that I will give my sense of what the right number would look like that would hopefully be acceptable to us, of course taking into account the constraints, practical constraints that we have, and also our intention to intensify our work in the GGE. We've already adopted the paragraphs on solemn declaration where we say that we will intensify our work, and we must actually have some harmony between this intention that we have set out under solemn declaration and the number of days. All right, let me give the floor now to our colleague from Bulgaria. Sir, you have the floor.
Just to echo your words, your last words, especially about the intensification, we think that we are kind of facing the danger to convey controversial messages. A lot has been said in this room about the vast pace of technologies, of the rapid pace of technologies, of the ever-growing complexity and the difficulty of those technologies, and then in the same time we're just like, it looks we are trying to restrain our time in discussing those very complex and sensitive issues. When we talk about substance, past meetings show that we need time to be accumulated until we reach this substance, and I think that no one maybe knows this best as the distinguished ambassador of the Republic of North Macedonia, who have been spending hours late at night and trying to capture the mood of the room and to reach those substantive outcomes. In that sense, I think that it would be a wrong message to send to the outside world that we are aware of the rapid pace of technologies, but at the same time we're not that much keen to discuss the complexity of those technologies and to discuss the kind of responsibility we want to take in response to those technologies and to the many aspects we often mention in our discussions. In that sense, Ambassador, we are in support of conveying the GG on laws for at least 15 days in the next year. And of course, I have to make the remark that the Bulgarian delegation is not the biggest delegation, and we're not also happy to work in June, but we should make the maximum to accomplish the commitments that we are praying we are ready to take upon our shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you, and I recognize the distinguished delegate of Venezuela, and I will give the floor next to our distinguished delegate from Argentina. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you. First, thank you for your efforts. Thank you to your team for all you've done to have this document that we can adopt. To adopt this report of this main committee. I'd like to support what Cuba said. My delegation, we have a small delegation also made up, it's just me. Even though there may be other people in our delegation, it's hard for us to have parallel meetings when additionally we are coordinating a rather big movement, a group. Maybe other delegations don't care about that, and that wouldn't be a source of concern for other delegations, but here we have a certain level of responsibility, and we need to maybe have some empathy for the difficulties other delegations might face. Now, yes, we have to be pragmatic. We need to try and have a decision that can be implemented. We realize that the theme of the 15 days, we understand Russia's position on the debates. Again, we share that. Probably 15 days, as was done for the RevCon, could be a compromise solution for all delegations. But I want to remind you that in 2017, NAM was presiding those meetings under the excellent presidency of the Indian ambassador. In 2017, the group then had 15 days, but could only meet for 5, precisely because of the theme of a lack of financial resources. So I bring this to your attention because we must be aware of what resources we have available. My delegation would go in line, will go along with what the High contracting parties decide. We will go with the consensus. We're all trying to achieve results here that can reflect the concerns of all delegations. So we stress that probably flexibility from delegations to have it 15 days would be most appropriate. I've also looked through the schedule of the Disarmament Conference. Some may think that the conference is doing nothing, but for my delegation it is important. And it finishes its work on the 1st of July. That's something to take into account. And I think it would be difficult for us because we have meetings July, August. In August, there's the biological RevCon, so the schedule is going to become even more hectic. But I stress we are flexible. If it's 10 days, 15 days, provided that we can reach a compromise solution between all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the distinguished delegate of Argentina. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you. We would like to align with those delegations who spoke out in favour of 15 days for next year. Just to ask, would it be possible? I realise the Secretariat has already carried out an analysis on what the disarmament meetings are going to be next year. Is it possible for greater clarity to see the number, not just the number of days, how many sessions will we have, and when can we have up on the screen perhaps a chart, a graph that the Secretariat has showing all the disarmament meetings? As Venezuela said, in July, after there's the conference of disarmament, there's a break in July, but there could be other ones arranged in the meantime. And there could also be a week in April between the conference and disarmament meeting and the second PrepCom for the ATT, but in April that is. But I think it would be useful if we could see up on the screen exactly what the schedule is. That way it might make it easier for us to decide when we want to pencil those meetings in for. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're coming close to a general sense of what the right number looks like. And my sense is that 15 days will be the number that would satisfactorily meet, our common commitment and our desire to intensify our work at the GGE process. It's 15 days, and I hope that colleagues will be in a position to consider this. I see that the Russian Federation wants to take the floor. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. We are in no way convinced that 15 days is a number of days that we need for this group. Once again, I repeat that in view of prior practice, we've tried various numbers of days. And I think 10 is the optimal number. On the one hand, it enables all states to focus their efforts on the group's activities, intensifying their activities within the group in order to reach substantive results and not repeat session in, session out what happened in previous days with the activities of the group. Therefore, I think 10 days is the best number. I think it best suits the group mandate that we're trying to agree on, and which allows the group to achieve productive, substantive results. Thank you.
I recognize the distinguished delegate of the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've listened carefully to the views that have been expressed, and like like every delegation, I think there seems to be unanimity on the need to intensify our work. But I was spurred to think creatively by the intervention made by our colleague from Cuba, who I think has pointed out that with the concrete proposal, the concrete mandate that we are focusing on, with its own focus on the idea of proposals, he pointed out that it's very likely that whatever initial session we have next year would be focused on proposals, the presentation of proposals. And so from the perspective of my delegation, it seems likely that the most productive way to spend our time, regardless of the number of days, would be to try to break up the days that we do have across a number of weeks that best allow us to move forward. So if one was to consider the first meeting to be focused on the proposals that might be made, and then subsequent days to be focused on considering and elaborating on those proposals, from the perspective of our delegation, it seems likely that we would need not 2 sessions in 2022, but 3 sessions. So 10 days could be divided into 3 sessions, and we would leave it to the chair to think, working with the secretariat, to think how best to do that. But another number that's divisible by 3 is 12, and that would allow a little more flexibility to structure work across 3 sessions and perhaps give a little bit more time. So that's one idea just to suggest to the group. Another idea, which is an idea that we considered and ultimately adopted in 2019, was to consider this question not across a single year but across 2 years, as a way to make sure that we're looking at the right number of days across a longer period of time. So that's another idea that I just wanted to mention, Madam Chair, for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the distinguished delegate of Belgium.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. Coming from a delegation that had the honor of chairing the GGE in 2021, it's my impression that I have the duty, or at least the possibility, to give our opinion on the situation. We chaired the longest GGE session ever. 20 days of formal meetings, not to mention numerous informals that we held, leading to substantial discussions, yes, but which also ultimately led to the results that we know all too well today. So I think the importance we should be focusing on is more important. The intensity is more important than the number. The quality is more important than the quantity. I share the vision of our colleague from the US just mentioned as to the need to have time between sessions, time to digest information which comes from the session, time to consider the proposals, and time to then meet to be able to move forward and move further in our discussions. Therefore, having held many consultations with the UN Secretariat, and I thank the Secretariat, by the way, for those, I think we could have lots of days, but often those days would go one after another, and the quality of work would end up being the poorer. And that's why during the GGE session, my ambassador, our delegation, we called for 10 days of sessions. We could perhaps move towards 15 in a spirit of consensus, but I think we need to remain pragmatic and take into account the information I've just given you, including also the issue of financial matters. Now, I think we were shown yesterday by the FRMS that in 2021, 30% of the funds from the CCW were assigned to the GGE. Now, that is an important subject for us all here. That's the reason also why probably discussions, there were so many discussions, but let's not lose sight of the fact that there are other things in the CCW also, which also require funds. And we need to bear that in mind, I think. 30% of the 2021 budget went to the GGE. Do we want to allocate as much time again, as much resources again in 2022, 23 on that subject? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wise and sobering reflections from our GGE chair and his team. I think these are important considerations. We do take note that we need to show, at least in the number of days that we set out for the work of the GGE, that we are intensifying our work rather than reducing our work, rather than the opposite. So 10 days is half the number of days we had last year. So it's not a very good way to reflect the level of commitment that we renew for this process. And therefore, having taken into account of course the advice and the views from our chair, I would like to propose, maybe this is a solution. Thank you to the U.S. delegation for, of course, envisioning how the sessions might be spaced, but I will leave that to the next GGE chair to consider with the delegations. But right now, let me try to propose language, and I will propose that we consider this language for this paragraph. The group shall meet for a minimum of 10 days and up to 15 days in Geneva in 2022, taking into consideration the availability of resources. Think about that. I have speakers still, and I recognize the distinguished delegate of Panama. Madam, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. To respond first to your proposal just presented, we obviously prefer to carry out the work of the GGE. We prefer 15 days in view of the experience of the last few days, which were left a lot to be desired in terms of that gives us time to reach agreements. And given all the work that's going in the UN and the restrictions of the COVID restrictions have meant that we weren't able to have evening sessions as we were able to have prior to COVID, and I think that needs to be taken into account. But also, we fully understand those delegations who expressed their concerns to avoid holding disarmament parallel meetings. Now, my delegation, I'm the only official that covers the disarmament machinery, but at the same time, in small missions like our own, we have to wear different hats. Here I'm doing this, RevCon. I'm also doing the follow-up to the Human Rights Council special session, so I'm doing lots of different things. As the Secretariat said, this theme of parallel meetings, it is important for the information to be presented so that we as states can take a well-informed decision. So I would support the proposal made by Argentina if we can have that information to see exactly what meetings have been confirmed and their dates. And we also, on this is also in view of the situation that we had with the BWC, where we were guaranteed that there would be a room free to hold the meetings of the PrepCom on a specific date. Then at the last minute we were told that there would be no room available, even though the dates had been confirmed. So all these are issues that we need to take into account, and we need to be able to make a well-informed decision. So I just say this to support what Argentina proposed, which I think is very relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. I will give the floor to the Russian delegation, after which I will move to suspend our session so that we can complete our consultations and resume when we're ready to proceed on this issue. All right? I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like quickly to respond to what was said by the representatives of other delegations with respect to the number of days of future meetings of the GGE in 2022. First, we would like to guard delegations against starting discussions about the number of sessions, about what matters will be discussed in the group. That's not the point of the current discussion. There's what we will discuss in future, but now we need to discuss the duration of the group's work next year. So we don't want to be anticipating, second-guessing the agenda, the number of sessions and other modalities of the group. That's not for us. As to the financial situation, it's very important in the context of the duration of the group's work next year. I think it would be rather sacrilegious to discuss significantly increasing the group's workload in light of the fact that we still have a deficit when it comes to ensuring the convention's work. The ISU isn't fully staffed, and that's been the case for many years. For our delegation, as we've said, the priority is ensuring that the ISU is fully staffed. But what do we see? $123,000 is the ongoing deficit when it comes to the unit. And in light of that, we are discussing increasing the activities of the GGE, increasing their workload. So let's be realistic and work on the basis of the financial resources that we have in the context of the convention. Let's make sure the ISU is fully staffed first, and then we can start saying how many days the GGE should sit for, and if we can increase the number of days. What's more, in our opinion, it's necessary in the Revcon's decision needs to clearly stipulate what the duration of the group's work will be in 2022. A constructive vagueness is not what we need. Therefore, we remain by our previous position. We think that 10 days is the best number needed to hold productive group meetings in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you for all the statements that you have delivered on this issue on the number of meeting days. Clearly, we are very serious in our responsibility of delivering the mandate that we intend to recommend for the plenary to decide. We only have a few remaining hours of the day, and I am prompted to suspend the session for a short break, and we will resume quickly as soon as we feel that we are ready to move on this matter. So the meeting is suspended. Good morning again, colleagues. We're opening we're reopening the meeting of Main Committee 2. Where's the language now? We've had consultations in good faith with colleagues at the short break that we had just now, and we are not able to move forward on the issue of the number of days. But since this will be considered in plenary together with the financial decisions of this review conference, our proposal is to leave this language, the number of days vacant, or we bracket this, but maybe we can live with X. The group shall meet for X days in Geneva in 2022. And then following the solution that they had for unresolved issues at the close of the Main Committee 1 yesterday, we will add a new paragraph 7, and this proposed paragraph is presented for your consideration. And it reads, the committee notes that the issue of the number of meeting days of the 2022 GGE on loss will need to be considered by the plenary. So this is our proposal, so just we can proceed with the adoption of the report as a whole and enable the plenary to proceed very quickly. I have requests from the United States and Cuba. Sir, you have the floor. The United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to say that we could support this proposal. We think it's an elegant way forward. One question, just technical question, is whether the bracket would need to be around the entire sentence, or could you put the bracket around XX, just to make very clear what the very narrow decision is for the plenary. Thank you.
If there's no objection to that, that looks like a very wise suggestion. The group shall meet for bracket days in Geneva in 2022. Right? I recognize the distinguished delegate of Cuba.
Madam Chair, in fact, we are quite flexible, but we wanted to suggest that what we have here on the screen as paragraph 7 become a footnote, because we are concerned that the idea here contained in paragraph 7 is appearing as if it were in other paragraphs 5 or 6 that contain very substantive issues. We want this really just to be a quotation, if you will, where we have XX, we there say footnote, that would state exactly the same thing, so that we don't lose visibility of the substantive parts of the report. Thank you.
There's a proposal to instead place this proposed new paragraph 7 to as a footnote instead of being a paragraph. I think that's reasonable. Way forward. I see no objection to that, so we will put it as a footnote, right, in the report to be adopted. Yes, I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the delegate of Cuba for that proposal. But I think it would be better to leave as a standalone para, so that there's a clear understanding that the committee notes the need in considering the number of days during the plenary. So the exact same wording was used within Main Committee 1. I don't think we need to create any new precedent. We need to use the existing practice and make a standalone paragraph regarding consideration of the number of days. Thank you.
Shall we retain this? Yes, the distinguished delegate of Cuba.
Microphone, please. I didn't want to extend the debate, prolong the debate. Thank you. We are indeed flexible. We don't want to prolong the debate. I'd simply like to point out to the distinguished delegation of Russia that unlike Committee 1, Main Committee 1, we had two bodies there, if you will. We had one section which contained the whole report and then another reference in another report which explains this. But we are flexible and we have no problem with going along with consensus. Thank you.
Are there any more requests for the floor? All right, review. Let's look at paragraph, I think this is 7. I will now move that we adopt the paragraph 7. So that's the new 8, actually. Can you correct the paragraph? It's not 7, it's 8. So just some corrections being made by the Secretariat. Thank you. So we are now moving towards the adoption. Let me just first address, of course, the issue raised by the Ambassador of New Zealand. I think he raised a very important point of clarification. We have all tried to keep a language that recognizes the great body of work that we are hoping to build on in our way forward. We think that this language, having met the agreement of many, the support of many delegations, is robust enough, and the language as it is does not diminish the importance of all these undertakings that we've had on the CCW work in the laws, in the CCW process, as well as the understandings, conclusions, and recommendations that we've seen in this process. And therefore, I would like us to move very quickly to consider this in good faith and in the spirit of flexibility. And I will ask that we now adopt paragraph 7 of this draft report as orally amended with the X on the number of days. I see no objection. Paragraph 7, yes. I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please delete the reference after 2022 or the footnote or the. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we ready to adopt paragraph 7 of this draft report as orally amended? Paragraph 7 is therefore adopted. We have a new paragraph 8, which was put forward earlier. I see that there is no objection to it, and I would, without any request for the floor, I would give the floor to the distinguished delegate of North Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with previous practice, we need to remove the square brackets. Thank you.
So I take it that we're ready to... I take it that we're finally ready to adopt paragraph 8 as presented. I see no request. This is adopted. Finally, paragraph number 9. Please review. So, thank you. Can I consider that this report that is now before us as orally amended is adopted as a whole by the committee? It is so decided. Thank you. We will now wrap up our work with agenda item 6 on conclusions. And the floor is now open for delegations that wish to address the committee. So, before I adjourn this meeting, I would like to thank all the delegations for your constructive participation and your contributions to the work of the main committee. It's very easy to, of course, see the outcomes of the report with skepticism, but we can also look at it with hope, considering that 1 week ago we were in a limbo and now we have a pathway ahead of us. Despite the shortcomings that each of us see in the mandate that we agreed, of course, some elements of it, some of us would consider a dream and others would consider a nightmare. That's very true. But I believe that the decision reached in the main committee with all your support and constructive participation is a concrete expression of the resolve of the high contracting parties to take this responsibility on addressing the challenges of laws quite seriously. And we can only hope, we hope and trust that the GGE and whoever the chair would be will have the will and wisdom to hold this responsibility safe in their hands. We thank, of course, our colleagues from the ICRC and partners in civil society for bearing with us, for supporting us in our work, for keeping us on our toes. The GGE process is something that will continue, and we hope that you will remain engaged Some of you have been in Geneva far longer than many of us diplomats have been engaged in this process, and we recognize that, and we expect that you will continue to shine the light of the highest expressions, the highest demands of public conscience to the work of the GGE as we all navigate the pathway that is set before us. And with that, I would like to congratulate the committee for concluding its work, and I would now declare the final session of the main committee 2 of the 6th review conference of the high contracting parties to the CCW adjourned. Thank you. After a short technical break, the meeting will resume in plenary.
Nous allons reprendre, chers collègues.
Colleagues, we'll be resuming.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We're going to resume our work in a formal session, plenary. I know there's a lot of excitement in the room after all the work of Main Committee 2, but we'll try to refocus and move to more technical considerations, financial considerations. Okay, everyone ready to go? Now, we interrupted our work on item 15 of the agenda in plenary, so we'll pick up consideration of item 15. Now, 15 is on financial issues related to the Convention, its next protocols and relations between the high contracting parties and the United Nations.
Contractantes et les Nations Unies. Souvenez-vous qu'hier...
You will recall that yesterday that we suspended consideration of that item on document that was submitted for your consideration. It was CCW Conf 6/CRP.1. At the request of some delegations, we held consultations, intensive consultations, to improve our reading of that text. The new text, you will have received that at 9:38 p.m. last night, including 2 amendments which change nothing in terms of the goal, the general objective of that paragraph. The first amendment is paragraph 304. There we added a phrase which reads in English:
will receive their credit backs respectively to the year of their paid assessed contributions. Ça c'est paragraphe 3.
That's 3.04. You'll have seen it yesterday evening. And then on 3.052 at the end, we added
le membre de phrase.
The following phrase.
States, en anglais, states will receive the credits back respectively to the year of their paid assessed contributions. Fin de citation. Ces deux ajouts.
Those 2 amendments don't change the objective or the balance of the paragraphs. They're simply there to provide greater clarity, to make sure that we are fully agreed as to the goals of those 2 paragraphs. So that's where we stand. Now, I understand there has been an agreement on that wording, but nevertheless, we need to go through it in plenary to see if there's a formal agreement on the document, the financial document entitled, so CCW Conf 6 CRP1. So my question to you is, can that document be adopted?
Brésil, vous avez la parole.
Brazil has the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Dear Ambassador, I want to thank you for giving me the floor this time to note that following yesterday's consultations, we reached a good solution, a possible solution for document CRP2 to be adopted. We have all witnessed your commitment to ensuring that the RevCon can take decisions, ensuring the stabilization of the financing of our convention and the management of its budget. You have you've taken important steps leading towards that RevCon, just as you mentioned in your invitation letter for the retreat in Evian. There you said that even if though the details of certain views expressed differed, our goals remain the same, and that is to stress that we are very close to a shared understanding of what we can agree to in December. It's our work together which has allowed us to achieve this result, and I'm proud, and I'm not surprised. Through you, we have been able to... We've seen France in its finest diplomatic and republican traditions. You were quite right to invite us right from day one, to invite us to show, to be constructive, a willingness to understand each other and to cooperate positively, to show once again that the CCW is a useful forum for international peace and stability. It's in the benefit and interest of us all. And we congratulate you for your excellent presidency of the CCW. Thank you, President. Much appreciated, says the President in Portuguese. I'm very touched by your statement that you spoke in my mother tongue. It's me and my team are very touched by that. I've got Russia. Will Russia be speaking French? Thank you, President. The Russian Federation, in the interests of multilingualism, will be speaking in one of the UN official languages, and that's Russian, which is, I think, a more simple solution for our delegation, but that's to take nothing away from the status of the French language, which also is an official UN language. We know how important issues of multilingualism are for the French delegation. Therefore, in view of that approach to multilingualism, we will continue in Russian. We would like to thank you, President, and your team for preparing these consolidated financial measures in the context of the CCW. Our delegation is ready to agree to the draft that was presented by you yesterday. It was just some slight amendments, but we would like to agree on this document ad ref for the time being, in view of the fact that there will be separate decisions in the final declaration. And we would like to agree on this document in a package with those decisions to be adopted under Section 3 of the RevCon final declaration. I thank you.
Tout à fait.
Absolutely spot on. That adoption will indeed be, it won't be definitive, it will be ad ref, because in the framework of our final report, that's where we do the final adoption. So yes, it will obviously be ad ref. Venezuela has the floor. My delegation takes this opportunity to thank you for all your efforts, President, for convening consultations overnight, last night. Your dedication and that of your team, as reflected in this robust document on consolidated financial measures under the Convention, definitely shows your interest and concern of your delegation on this theme. Also, thank you to your team in particular, who worked very late in the middle of the night yesterday, who were committed to, still listen to delegations who had legitimate concerns about certain aspects of the text. They had a very open ear. We reached a compromise solution which includes the concerns expressed by my own delegation, and therefore we can join the consensus for the adoption of this report, of this document. We have witnessed a compromise, the commitment to work together. It shows that when we understand each other and we put ourselves in the shoes of other states, it shows that we can see the reasons why a given delegation has made a specific comment or proposal. It shows the commitment and a constructive spirit to achieve results by consensus, which probably isn't satisfactory for everyone, but it is at least a compromise which shows the commitment to achieving tangible results for the benefit of the financial stability of the convention. Thank you.
C'est moi qui remercie.
Duly noted. Thank you, Venezuela. Thank you for your constructive participation throughout our last consultations yesterday evening. No, I see no other delegations asking the floor. Therefore, I ask the question one more to verify. We will be adopting the document ad ref for provisional adoption ahead of this afternoon, which will be part of a decision in the final report. So this is an ad ref adoption. Is everyone in agreement? If there are no objections, it is so decided. Excellent. Just to extend the discussions a little bit, because I wanted to make a quick comment in the capacity of the presidency as to what we've done, what we've adopted ad ref just now. I wanted to say that this document must be also. It's very much thanks to the previous presidency. So I want to thank our friend Rob Gabriel from the Netherlands, who did so much work upstream. Also, thank you to Mr. Georginski, who gave us a lot of advice on this issue. This document is a collective product, and based on all the proposals submitted by numerous delegations, their contributions, the debates that we all took part in, my delegation, like your own delegations, we all worked to achieve this outcome. It's a real joint effort. So let's all hope that these measures will allow us to stabilize the financial situation of the CCW so that we can focus on substance, so that we can finally have, as long as possible, greater visibility on how our work's going to be financed. So once again, thank you very much to all of you. Now, we haven't yet entirely finished the issue of agenda item 15, because we're now to provisionally adopt the costs for meetings for next year. Now, you will have received a certain number of documents ahead of this session. 4 documents to be exact, so we will consider them one by one and adopt them one by one. The first is document CCW Conf 7/7 concerning the costs on laws. Now, it contains a number of different options when it comes to duration, which are covered. Therefore, I think there should be no difficulty with that document. The other document is CCW Conf 6/8, estimated costs for the 22 meeting of the high contracting parties to the convention. Would delegations like to make any comments regarding those 2 documents, 7 and 8?
Je ne vois pas.
I see no requests for the floor. Can I take it that those estimates are adopted?
Ok. Il en est ainsi.
So decided. I thank you. Now, colleagues, we have just adopted also ad ref, a quinquennial budget covering the period 2022 to 2026. We are now due to adopt for the budget for the activities of the CCW in 2023 to 2025 and 2026. There are 2 documents in that respect. So we have Conf 6/9 for the 2023-25 budget and CCW Conf 6/10 2026 budget. 2026 budget is a separate document since the 7th RevCon and the PrepCon for that conference are scheduled for 2026. I see that Russia would like to make a remark on those two documents. You have the floor. Thank you, President. In view of the fact that we have the new financial rules that were adopted ad ref, which are to be considered in the package of separate decisions of the RevCon, we would propose including a footnote or reference in the heading of those documents, as we did for the document on the laws GGE and as we did in the document for the meeting of high contractive parties to the convention, that the decision will be adopted by the 6th RevCon dependent on the decision of the 6th RevCon, as was done, like we did with the article for 5% unpredictable costs, both as we did in those two documents, as I say, for the GGE on laws and the meeting of the high contracting parties, because those decisions are interlinked. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Russia. Just to be clear, that footnote, which poses no difficulty for me, effectively, where do you want it which document, where do you want to see it exactly? Thank you. So documents 9 and 10 on the 2023 to 25 budget and the 2026 budget, because those documents are related to the new financial rules of procedure for the convention that we just adopted ad ref. And in view of that, until a decision is taken, otherwise we'd like to have a reference or a footnote pending the decision
made by the 6th Review Conference. В заголовке.
In the heading, so in the heading of those documents. The chapeau.
Okay. Je ne vois pas de difficulté.
That's no problem. I will just need to suspend the meeting for 2 minutes, just so that those concerns are properly reflected in those two documents, and then we'll put them up on the screen. So please stay seated. This won't take long, because it's just that we have a problem with time management. I just want to be able to close this agenda item, but we're going to include this technical clarification now. So just give me 2 minutes. If you just please stay seated.
Ok. Donc voilà, ça a été très rapide.
Okay, we did that very quickly, so I propose, I don't think it's necessary, I don't think we need to put it on the screen, but you have the documents with you. So what we're talking about, these two documents / CCW Conf 6/9, and in that document, after the title 23-25 budget, we would add just a sort of footnote there with the following text.
The decision of the 6th Review CCW Conference. Voilà, ça c'est ce que...
So that's what we'll do for document 9. And we'll do exactly the same thing with document 10, CCW Conf 610. The title is the 2026 budget. So after that, we would just we would include a footnote with the following text.
Pending the decision of the 6th review CCW conference. Donc, puisqu'on...
So can I take it that those documents are now provisionally adopted by the plenary as orally amended?
Je ne vois pas de...
I see no one's raising their flag, so decided. Thank you.
Je crois que...
Okay. I think item 15 of the agenda, I think we have done everything that was required. Thank you. So I'll be able to close that agenda item and move to item 16 of the agenda. And 16 is just entitled Other Matters. Would any delegation like to take the floor under this agenda item?
Je ne vois pas.
I see no delegation requesting the floor under this agenda item. Therefore, I will close it. Thank you. We can then move to item 17, the report of the Credentials Committee. For that, I will invite to the podium, if he's ready, Mr.
Le président,
the chair of the...
Macedonia, qui va faire maintenant...
If the chair would like to come up to the podium and deliver his report, sir, you can come up. And then we can do that immediately.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. I have the honour to present the report of the Verification Committee, the 6th Review Conference of the CCW. The report is CCW/conf.6/CCCRP1, and it was sent to all delegations via email yesterday evening. The conference agreed to appoint me as the chairperson of the committee, and General Brigadier Emmanuel Ura from the Permanent Mission of Uganda as the vice chairperson. Furthermore, Mr. Florian Antori from Romania, Mr. Simon Klebery from the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and Mr. Patrick Hassan Morley Korama from Sierra Leone have all been appointed by the conference as members of the Accreditation Committee or Credentials Committee, and I'd like to thank them for participating in this work. The committee met on the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th of December in order to review the credentials of the participants taking part in this conference. When carrying out its work, the committee focused on a practice that has been followed during previous review conferences. At each of those meetings, the committee looked at a table sent by the ICU containing up-to-date information on the state of play of the submission of credentials from representatives of the high contracting parties who are participants in the conference. We've taken note of the information submitted by the ISU, Implementation Support Unit, and accepted to confirm the credentials of the high contracting parties and present their official credentials in a traditional format. In other words, the physical original form of the document, and we also accepted provisional credentials whilst awaiting that the original credentials be submitted as soon as possible, as set forth in Article 3 of the Rules of Procedure. The committee has actively approached and invited during the course of the week the contracting parties who had not yet done so to present to the Secretary General of the conference the credentials of their representatives. The committee not only examined the credentials, but also the note verbale of the contracting parties, the signatories and non-signatories of the convention. On the 16th of December at 4 p.m., as stated by the committee's report, 53 high contracting parties submitted their official credentials. 25 high contracting parties submitted copies of their credentials, and 2 contracting parties informed us that they were appointing by note verbale their representatives or via a letter from the permanent mission located here in Geneva. Since the report was distributed yesterday evening, the original version of the 4 additional credentials of the high contracting parties was received by the Secretariat. Therefore, we now have 57 contracting parties who have presented their official credentials and 21 contracting parties who presented provisional credentials. The committee's report was amended consequently, and the updated version will be distributed as soon as possible during the lunch break. So, Chairperson, I have concluded the presentation of the Credentials Committee report to the conference, and I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur, pour cette...
Thank you very much, sir, for that very specific presentation. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, of course, as well as the other members of the Credentials Committee for being willing, available and involved in this key function, which is key to the smooth running of our conference. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, there we have the reports from the Credentials Committee, and I open the floor. I see Argentina would already like to take the floor. You have the floor, madam.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like to ask whether we're going to have the report up on the screen, because my delegation would like to make a slight amendment to it.
Juste quelques secondes, nous...
It'll be up just in a couple of seconds. We're trying to put it up on the screen.
Voilà, il est à l'écran, je vous...
You have the report on the screen and you have the floor.
El señor Loren Masmejan de...
Mr. Loren Hasmahan of Switzerland, General Brigadier Emmanuel Casatura from Uganda, and Madam Yin Jun I'd like to thank all of them for their work and for preparing this report. My delegation would like to make a slight amendment to paragraph 3B of the report. It would be section 3B, says the speaker. Or perhaps session 2, or section 2B even, where we have reference to provisional credentials. I've received comments from my capital that regrettably, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the delay in submitting the credentials on this occasion is out of our control. Usually we're in a position to present credentials every year. And I would like to propose, if other delegations are in agreement, that we add at the end of the paragraph the following sentence. Perhaps you could take note of this sentence. It would read as follows.
The delay in the presentation of formal credentials was related to restrictions imposed by COVID-19 pandemic. Esa sería la enmienda. Muchas gracias.
That would be the amendment. Thank you very much.
Nous allons mettre à l'écran la proposition.
We will put the proposal up on the screen, but I don't think there will be any problems on the substance. In the meantime, I'll give the floor to Costa Rica. Thank you very much, sir. I'd simply like to endorse the suggested amendment put forward by Argentina in terms of the language that she has reflected. This really reflects the circumstances that many delegations have had to grapple with, and my country would like to support that language. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank Costa Rica. Japan is next on my list, to be followed by Uruguay and Brazil.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Apologies, we're waiting for Japan. Please, could you turn off your microphone, Uruguay, and Japan, turn on yours.
Costa Rica, pouvez-vous éteindre votre...
Costa Rica, sorry, could you please turn off your microphone?
So I would like to thank all the members of the Committee of the Credentials, and I would like to also support the languages proposed by our distinguished representative of Argentina. The same situation is applied to Japan in terms of the delay which we took in presenting our credentials. Thank you very much.
Merci bien.
Thank you. Uruguay.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Apologies for what happened earlier. Uruguay would also like to support Argentina's proposal. We find ourselves in the same situation as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have had delays and difficulties when it comes to administrative issues, which require colleagues in capital to be present. Thank you very much. Thank you, Uruguay, and I give the floor to Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would, without taking much time of this plenary, I would briefly like to commend you and the other shareholders of this committee and other committees for their continued hard work. I would just like to echo what has been proposed by the delegation of Argentina. I think this applies in general to, in my opinion, to the situation that these countries are in right now, that they have not been able to submit the original. So I completely agree to the proposal made by Argentina. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie le Pakistan.
Thank you, Pakistan. I call upon Brazil, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. To respect multilingualism, and given that this is a proposal by Argentina, I will speak in Spanish. We also support the statement made, and Brazil has been able to present its letters in time. Nonetheless, we share the delays faced, and I think this is a good language to reflect what has actually happened.
Bien. Le multilinguisme
Okay, multilingualism is progressing at a very fast pace today. Thank you very much, Brazil. There are no further requests for the floor on this agenda item. I see Venezuela. My apologies. You have the floor, madam. I would also like to support the language. We understand that delegations have faced difficulties in presenting their original credentials letter, and we understand this problem. We think it would be a good idea to have this language, therefore.
Ok. Donc, pardon, le Canada, s'il vous plaît.
Canada, please.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. We are looking at the previous paragraph, in fact. We have heard the arguments put forward by the delegations who've taken the floor. We respect their explanations. However, I would note that the added sentence in English says, in most cases. And I believe that 4 or 5 delegations have affirmed amongst those in B and have referred to the reasons related to COVID-19. This is not in line with the total number of delegations indicated in B. So I don't think it's factually accurate to say in most cases, unless other delegations, of course, raise the same issues. I think it would be more accurate to say some delegations, or to factually reflect the reality. Thank you.
Bon, moi, je parle très mal anglais.
Well, my English is very poor, so could we say in some cases then?
Le multilinguisme progresse.
Multilingualism, again, is progressing very well. In some cases, then, we can say. India is on my list. And I'm sure that my dear colleague, the Ambassador of India, will come up with a solution, as is always the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm taking the floor because the British ambassador didn't take the floor. And they are the ones who taught us English. So I think it might be, while I have no issues with the Canadian proposal, I think he makes a very wise proposal. Maybe it might be more appropriate to use imposed due to the COVID-19 pandemic or owing to the COVID-19 pandemic rather than by the COVID pandemic itself. Thank you.
So, voilà une solution à mon avis qui...
That would be a solution. I think that would perhaps satisfy everyone. Instead of the previous sentence initially proposed, we would replace it by a more factual sentence.
Credentials due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Est-ce que ça convient à tout le monde?
Is everyone happy with that? Okay, I think that's the case. Could you, Secretary, delete the second sentence on the screen? Okay, so that's the situation. Any other comments on this report? I think we're ready then to adopt it. Can I take it that this report is adopted by our conference? It is so decided. Thank you very much. We still have a little bit of time, and we can move to looking at agenda item 18. This is reports of the main committees. As you know, in accordance with Article 35 of the Rules of Procedure, the conference is made up of two committees this week. Main Committee 1, tasked with reviewing the scope and functioning of the Convention, including the functioning of the Annex Protocols, with general declarations on new proposals. Main Committee 1 was presided over by Ambassador Yuri Sterk from Bulgaria, which I'd like to thank for their involvement in recent days, and I'd like to thank him for his work. The report of the Commission was under CCW Conf.6/MC.1/CRP1 yesterday evening. And I'd like to just ensure that there are no additional comments to this report, because the report was adopted as part of Main Committee 1, but we do need to adopt it in plenary also. This is the procedure. Are there any comments?
Aucune, donc nous adoptons.
None, so this report stands adopted. We can now move on to the work of Main Committee 2. Just to remind you, this committee, which met this morning, was tasked with reviewing the additional proposals to the Convention and any other proposals. Ambassador Maria Teresa Almojuela from the Philippines led Main Committee 2's work. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank her for her involvement in recent days. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of her team. The report was adopted today, about an hour ago, and is available under the reference CCW/conf/6MC2/CRP1 as amended orally. Would delegations like to make comments again that we've adopted as part of Main Committee 2? Given that we need to adopt this report of Main Committee 2 in plenary, I would open the floor to any comments. Can we all agree to adopting that report? I don't see any nameplates up. It is so decided. We can then close agenda item 18. And now we can move on to agenda item 19. Agenda item 19 will be addressed very briefly. This is the report of the drafting committee in line with Article 36 of the Rules of Procedure. Parties to the conference could decide to hold a drafting committee. This hasn't been the case. It wasn't necessary to do so this week. We didn't convene a drafting committee, so there's no report to consider by definition. I simply wanted to make sure that there are no comments on this agenda item. And if there are no comments, I can close that agenda item once again. No comments, so we can close agenda item 19. Okay, we've worked very well this morning. I'd like to thank all of you. This afternoon, we will resume the work of the plenary conference, and we will consider agenda item 20 as well as 21. Item 20 pertains to the consideration and adoption of the final document, and item 21 relates to the closing of our conference. The final documents will be distributed over the lunch break. We have a couple of technical adjustments to make. We need to gather everything that has been commented on this morning, and over the lunch break we hope to circulate it as quickly as possible so that we can begin our work very quickly at 3 p.m. or 3:05 if possible. I think things will go pretty quickly, but as I said the other day, we don't have an available room after 6 p.m. And I think in terms of substance, there won't be any major difficulties because we've made a great deal of headway on the substance. So that's the state of play in terms of our work. We will resume at 3 p.m. I wish you a very good lunch, and I will see you later at 3 p.m. The meeting stands adjourned.
Pitäisikö taas mennä loistoravintolaan syömään? Ei tässä varmaan muutakaan vaihtoehtoa ole. Mä kävin aamulla, mä tulin siis kävelen tuolta, niin mä kävin pikkasen kävelemässä, mä olin vähän niin liian ajoissa siinä lähetyksessä. Niin.